There you go.
Yeah, so welcome. This is Leicester Fan TV. Obviously, I'm joined by Reedy and Lox today. We're just going to discuss a few things. I think fans are starting to get a bit wound up, maybe by the lack of things going on with Leicester. Reedy, to start off, what do you make to these comments? Obviously, I pointed out Daka has been on social media saying his statements, as have a lot of the players. But it's as the title of the show says, is it a bit meaningless? It doesn't really come across as sorry we got relegated, as a lot of players have really said maybe apologies and that, but nothing really saying, well, I'm going to be here next year and try it again.
I'll firstly say I think they were right that they had to give it like a week or so to put something out there, because again, as much as we think it doesn't matter to them because they don't care, it obviously does in some way, because even on their professional career, they don't want someone a relegation on their record, do they? So they've had time to give them time to get themselves around and hopefully giving themselves a boost, saying that we're going to come back and do well. But again, like I say, all these messages, no one has come out and said we'll stay thick and thin and try and get us back to the Premier League. But we do know there is some that will leave, like I say, Mendy and all that have already been confirmed to go, so you can't really say anything about them. But it's like Vardy as well. He's put something out, but it's not said like I want to try and do my best to bring us back up. He's literally just said I'm sorry for what's happened. So you don't know what is going on again with Daka. I'm a big fan of him, and I still think there's something there for him at Leicester, especially in the Championship. I think he could, and this is me having a big shout. I do think he could probably get one of the top goal scorers this season if he stayed. That's just me. I know it's a big shout, but yeah, I think
I'm just going to pull this comment up for Lox. It says Richard Deere said only Christian has committed. So he's the only one that has come out and said he is ready for a fight in the Championship. What kind of message does it really pull across when you hear the players that are still here? Someone like Daka, not really. He's not confirmed he is going or staying, and obviously we're 12 days in, no manager. It just feels like there's not much consistency at the club, and considering we're in a pretty sticky situation going into the Championship with a lot of players going in and out. What do you think to the whole situation?
Yeah, well, the Christensen's a weird one because it wasn't really to Leicester fans that he was saying it. Obviously, he was over in Denmark, and maybe he didn't. He probably didn't think at the time that would even get over to us. To be fair, but he's pretty much said that he wants to stay and get us back up next season. With the others, it's a weird one because a lot of the words that they put out there are meaningless if they're not here next season. But the reason why I think it's weird is because players like Daka and Vardy, obviously we know Maddison and Barnes are going. They might have to go. The club might have to sell them. They might want to stay, but we might have to get rid. Obviously, Christensen I think will stay regardless because he's only been here 6 months. Same with Suter. But your players like Daka, I just think he probably just doesn't know if he's going to be here because the club might have to sell him. If they get an offer in for him for a decent price, they might think, well, hold on a sec, we can cash in there and bring in somebody else. So I just think it is hard when we're seeing them put up these words, which could be them, could be PR, I don't know. But I genuinely think most of the players probably don't know if they're going to be here at all. And that makes it hard to put out a statement. It does. It makes it hard to put out a statement. And as well, we saw a couple of players take out Leicester from their bios and stuff on social media. So you'd imagine they're going. But again, I think it's probably down to, it's like when we heard about Matt Piper years ago. He wanted to stay at Leicester, but the club sold him because they needed to financially. So even a couple of players that do want to stay, they might have no options. So,
yeah, I think like you say, a lot of these players' futures are in doubt, and I think Scott, saying it, silly of them to any. I think this whole statement really kind of makes sense because if we were in a situation where we don't know who comes, like you said, Patson Daki's probably on 80 grand a week at the moment. If he's got some kind of, wage deduction because we've been relegated, who really knows that we're not the inside people to the club, so we don't know that for a fact. But again, if someone offers maybe even just 10, 15 million for Daka, it gets 80 grand off the wages, and we know we're going to need it. But I think, as well, some of the comments, there's no manager still in place, and we've seen clubs. I know, Reedy, you weren't a massive fan of, I think it was Shane Duffy, who signed for Norwich earlier today. And I know you're saying he's a bit old in that, but it's kind of coming to the point where, with no managers in place, who is keeping and who is signing these players in 5 days' time?
It's hard because I do agree with certain aspects to say we can't go for the caliber of players we know we have done in the last few years. I get that. But it's when people say the likes of Duffy, who's a good player for me, he's not even been playing for Brighton the last 3 or 4 years. He's been sitting on the bench, and as much as it feels like an Evans signing back then, and as much as I want a young squad going into this championship side, like the likes of Dewsbury Hall, like Chowdhury and all that, who knows how to put a fight in. You don't want older players to be in that team and be the settled player in the team. You don't want that. You need someone who wants to be up for the fight. A Christensen, young, and he's up for the hunger and fight. So for me, yes, and I agree with what Phil always says about managers. There's not a manager there to say, I want to keep you or I want to sell you or we have this project, so I want you to stay. I've put a deadline for getting a manager in for me. I've said I don't want to wait too long, but I don't want to be rushing to get the first man in the door, like for the likes of Steven Gerrard, who could be just good or could be really awful. And I've said the 14th, and that's when the deadline day for the window opens. So, and that's when Company came into Burnley last season. So it's still possible to do it, and it's still possible we can still smash the season if we bring a manager in by then. But I've given myself 5 days until then to get a manager in.
I know what you're saying. I think when you look at Burnley's situation, they brought Company in who's had very little managerial experience and nothing in English league. He was in the Belgium league, I think, is where he started off, and he got the chance to come to Burnley, and obviously they had a massive U-haul and they got rid of all the players. I think, like Mike's saying here, we haven't heard anything about the manager, the Pep's assistant one, because obviously Champions League final, he's going to want that on his CV that he won the Champions League. So I don't think we're going to hear much about that, Lox. Just the whole situation from Leicester point, it's if we were to say get Dean Smith in on 3 days' time, Sunday, we know Dean Smith is the manager. Is that a bit embarrassing from Leicester to have two weeks worth of not knowing who the manager is and it to just be the man who was already there?
I think if I'm Dean Smith, I'm saying get lost to Leicester, because he's clearly not first choice. He's clearly not second choice, probably not third choice. And it was the same when he came in, when Rodgers was sacked. We went for Potter, and rumours, obviously, that it was Jesse Marsh and Rafa Benitez. And then it seems like we settled for Smith. And it seems that way again. If Smith is announced as the permanent manager, it seems like it's probably because the other ones we tried to get weren't interested. So I think appointing Smith now is the wrong thing to do. And I would say the opposite 2 weeks ago. But now I think it's the wrong thing to do, because he's clearly not the man that the board want. And if it's not the man that the board want, you can't bring him in. I think you just need to go for your number one target. Do your best. Obviously, Potter was always going to be unrealistic. Let's be fair. So we're hearing Park. We're just hearing so many names, and this Man City one as well. And I just think you need to. What was that? Dean Smith came in because no one else wanted it. Yeah, exactly. But there are managers now that I think are above Dean Smith in the pecking order that would take the job, and I think you've got to go for them. It's unfortunate for Smith because he didn't keep us up, but there was an improvement. I think even just a tiny one. There was an improvement. The mood was lifted, and we played better football at times. So. It's hard for him, but I think it almost seems like it's certainly not going to be him.
I
But it needs to
I agree
happen
with you.
soon. We need to hear someone.
I think she offered Dean Smith 2 weeks ago. I think there's going to be grumbles whoever we get. There's going to be at least a handful of people aren't going to be happy with who comes in. That's just how it will be. But for me, Dean Smith, if it was 2 weeks ago, at least he's at the club, he's ready. But for it to be, like you said, 2 weeks on and him being fourth choice down in the pecking order, it's a bit like the club's not 100% committed to giving him the role. So why would he give 100% back when you know that if he got offered the job, he would take it? But he's not going to be as I don't think he'll be as committed to it because it doesn't really show us backing. Like, we got relegated, but same day Dean Smith is just going to be the manager for the Championship, and we've not moved. It's taken way too long to move on, and we've obviously had a lot of names been thrown around. I think a few people in disagreement. I've had people say they'd rather have Man City coach over Scott Parker, but for me, if you had the option of two, I'd get Scott Parker just because he's got 2 clubs promoted to the Premier League. He's a fresh set of eyes. That Man City coach, I don't even know his name. That's why I keep saying the Man City coach. He's had no managerial experience, let alone anything in the Championship. Really, where do you stand? Obviously, with managers coming in, because I think if you said to you 2 weeks ago, you probably would have said, "Don't get Dean Smith in, look for someone new." But in the situation we're in, who does come in and take that job?
It's difficult because again, everything when on the way back from that West Ham game, we were saying that would you keep Dean Smith? On one side, I'm like, no, because now we're in the Championship, we need something fresh and somebody who's got an idea of what they want. But then when Phil kept saying about, but he knows the players, he knows what he's doing, he's been there for the last 8 weeks, he knows the players kind of already, so you probably give him that. But for me now, again, like Lox said, it's pointless getting Dean Smith in because he's not the main man they want. So I just want to see someone come in who's got a plan and a philosophy to like I watched Company when he went to Burnley, and his press conference to the players saying, "This is what I want to do. This is how I want to play," and that's exactly what I want. I want someone to come in who's fresh, got new ideas. I'm not the biggest fan of someone like Scott Parker when he keeps saying to the press conferences after they lose games, saying, "Oh, we shouldn't have we didn't deserve to win this anyway."
Him out there, Reedy, and I know you're probably going to disagree. You said all the things, and there is one man that would probably come in with a fresh set of eyes and a fresh style of play and want to do things a different way. That it would be Steven Gerrard, and I know as many people wouldn't want Steven Gerrard, he is going to come in with a lot to prove, a bit like Company did with Burnley. Again, there was no real guts. It was a gutsy move for Burnley to get Company because there was no reason. There was no, he's not had any experience, but Gerrard, he did pretty okay in Rangers, and I know he had an okay stint at Villa, probably pretty bad towards the end. But for me, and it has been thrown out, I'm not saying I'd want him personally, but I think when you look at the situation and the managers that come in and don't come in, if you wanted someone that's ambitious and on the market at the moment, would Gerrard not be up there as a top contender?
It's hard because again, because there's not that many managers that we've been linked with, and there's only a select few that we're probably going to appoint. So again, my first choice probably would be Scott Parker because again, he's brought 2 teams up previously, whereas Steven Gerrard, yes, he's done okay at at Rangers and then went to Villa. He's not done anything special for me to be like, wow, come in and have fresh ideas. I just don't think he's that sort of tactical manager where Scott Parker's obviously done it so much. And he's done it twice now to bring teams up. And with the quality that we should have still, I know a lot of players are going to leave, but the quality we will have by the end of the window, I still think we'll have enough quality there to be one of the top teams on paper to push for the league again in the Championship. So for me, Gerrard is a no-go. But then again, you haven't got many choices. You've got Scott Parker, Gerrard.
Yeah.
The Man City coach, which is a weird one because again, we don't even know his name, so what's the point of even talking about it? And then who else have you got? Again, Dean Smith, but like we've just been saying, he's not going to be in that job. I'll be shocked if he is. Other than that, I don't see anyone coming in.
Yeah, I think, like I said, we could go in loops and roundabouts about who does come in, who doesn't come in. So it's one of those things. It will be who it is. I just really hope that in a weird way, I hope it's not Dean Smith because I'm like, what, it's another start. It's a bad start to the season when we're messing around like that.
I keep seeing comments, not on here as such, but online, just about saying that we need to look more long term than Parker, because some people say, oh well, Parker, he might get us up, but then once we're in the Premier League, what happens then? I disagree with this whole we need to look long term. I think the club need to get up first time. I think that's the main thing. We need to get in the Premier League. We can't afford to stay in the Championship for another year, I don't think. So the problem is, all right, let's look long term and we can build a squad to get promoted in a couple of years. I don't think that's what the club should be aiming for. I think the Premier League.
I'm just going to say something very quickly, so I'm not going to interrupt anymore. But the thing is, long term, who is going to come into Leicester long term and be brilliant for the Premier League?
We were looking long term last season, weren't we? When we did the Singapore, bringing that on and signing all these players, and that was all long term thinking. Booking us for a Singapore tour 4 days before the Championship kicks off is thinking we're in the Premier League still. So again, long term thinking in a situation when you've got to take it match by match, and we do just need to take it. This season is the Championship, and we have to sign players for the Championship. We have to sign a manager for the Championship.
Yeah, I think one thing as well, which might be going on in negotiate. We have no idea what goes through Rodkin's head. Obviously, I don't think many people do, but give them. You can't. I know it's hard to sack a manager once they get you promoted, right? But give them a 1-year contract. Just get a manager in, 1-year contract. It means that if it's a bad season, you don't have to pay him compensation to sack him. And if it's a good season and you go up and someone else is available in a year that you think might be better long term, then you can sack the manager again, no compensation, and bring someone else in. It's savage. It's savage, getting us promoted and sacking someone. I would love to know if anybody can come up with a stat on when that's ever happened. But we need to get to the Premier League, and we need, for the future of the club, we need to get back to being a stable Premier League team. And I think looking long term and all this, I don't think that's really possible at the minute.
It's pointless looking long term in the Championship. Who's going to want to come in? The only one I would have said would be Potter, because it's long term, where he comes in the Championship, gets his promoted straight away, and then he's back in the Premier League with where he wants to be. So that's the only one I could say long term, but it's not going to happen. And like you say, who did Scott Parker bring up last season? Was it Fulham or Bournemouth? It was
Bournemouth.
It was Bournemouth, and he did start the season as manager and then got sacked. So that I'm happy enough to give him the year. If he gets promoted, give him a few more games, or even a month or two of games. And if it don't work, then say thank you for getting us back into the Premier League. Be on your way. And that's what I'd say is a brilliant appointment for a manager at the moment, because there's no point looking longer than that.
That's one name we haven't seen anywhere, isn't it? Carrick. I think he's happy at Middlesbrough, but that would be something I might be willing to back. But
I think I'd take Carrick, but with his, he's building something at Middlesbrough.
Yeah.
He's again, you got to think of it. It'd probably be the same wages as Middlesbrough, same kind of club size, maybe same kind of fans, and they're in the Championship, but he's built a good, relationship over there. I think to come to Leicester would be a bit of a switch around. Just to change topics a little bit back onto players, there was a statistic. Johnny Evans, obviously he's under review at the moment, whether we give him a year extension on contract. In the last 60 games, 6-0, he has played 15 times. That's one game every 4 matches, roughly. Would you have someone like that in the Championship?
Who's this, sorry? Who did you say?
Johnny Evans. Would you have someone who plays a game every 4 matches who maybe would be captain still?
I've said I don't want him. I don't want anyone old-ish, if you know what I mean. Like, see, he's got experience, he's got whatnot, and he was in the Championship before we bought him. But at this point, it's hard to say. I want to keep him because I'm not a big fan of him, but I just don't think he will suit the Championship anymore. We need young players, the likes of Faze and Such at the back. For me, perfect sort of.
I've heard Faze might be going there. Really, I've heard he wants out of the club. He is a player that wants to leave, because he signed with intentions. And again, he's an international player. He's not going to be wanting to play in the Championship. When he's getting call-ups to Belgium, he's going to be wanting to play, again, probably European football in some way, shape or form. And again, I think one of the players to get off the wage bill would be Faze. And I think we could sell him for maybe just as much as we bought him for.
I think you'd be lucky. I think you'd be lucky for that, mate. I think.
How much did we buy him for? Was it 20?
Wasn't it 18? Was it? Or
It was
18 million?
18.
I think we could get around that if we.
I think maybe 15. I think I can't see us selling somebody for the same price we brought them in and being in a league lower, but we could be surprised. But just what you were saying on Evans, I think, because obviously it's going to be if he does sign it's a brand new contract he's going to be on. So you'd imagine the talks ongoing are, probably half the wages that he was on last season. I think if you get him on a very cheap deal, I think he's probably handy to have around the ground, around the training ground, just because there's going to be a load of players leaving. You want someone in there who knows the club. And when this bunch, 20, 30 new players come in, I'll be surprised if that happens. But when we get this new intake of players, it's good to have someone who knows the club in there in the changing room. But I don't think we can rely on him to play, too many games. And he struggled in the Premier League. Championship's a more physical league, so that tells you one thing: he's probably going to struggle. But I just think having him around might be a good thing if you can get him on a cheap salary. Yeah,
it was like Wes Morgan when we had him for like a year extension every time. As much as he didn't play, he was there for the changing rooms and stuff like that. So
morale,
for that maybe so, but I just don't see him playing in the Championship.
Yeah, obviously it's going to be a tough season ahead, and as fans, we're all here talking about what we should do and who we could bring in, who goes. It'd just be nice to see the club doing the same, because you obviously hear all these rumours about players leaving, players coming, managers likewise, but there really hasn't been any movement from the club whatsoever. And the window does open in 5 days, and I've heard a lot of rumours of players leaving. There's Maddison, Spurs. Heard that I think rumoured about 60 million. I think
more on if he goes there.
Maddison again. And I think just like you say, that's a bit of it is an upgrade, because top Premier League team, they don't win much, but again, it's better than Leicester Championship. Tielemans, I think he's another player I wanted to discuss about his quality. I think if he goes to Villa, really does show where his quality is, because he was thinking maybe a year ago, if we sold him last summer, he could have been going to an Arsenal, because that's where he was linked to. And his quality this season, because he has been down tooling, let's be honest, I don't think he has been playing 100% every week. I think Villa, that sums up his quality this season, and I don't think he would be best pleased going to Villa knowing that Arsenal was his linked rumour club to go to. I don't know.
Can you imagine 2 years ago his agent coming to him and saying, "Oh, Villa's available"? He would have said, "What the? Shut up." So, look, I think Villa's stock has risen and Tielemans has fallen at the same time, which is why he's now linked with there. I've seen Roma and Galatasaray as well, Milan. He's been linked with. I've heard things that he wants to stay in England. So, but because of his kids and stuff, doesn't want to relocate them. So maybe that's one of the reasons. Are there any other teams that would take him? Above Villa now. You're thinking Newcastle. He doesn't get in Newcastle's team at all.
He's probably asking for a lot of money as well, because he says, "Well, you have to spend £0 to get me."
Yes,
I'm asking for 150 grand a week. Because it's going to cost you nothing. So, as someone like you said, Newcastle, Arsenal are way bigger than Tielemans. Newcastle is way bigger than Tielemans. So, I just, like I said, Villa, I think that is his standard of quality, and I think that does show he kind of got what he deserved a little bit. I think, I'm not saying Villa's a bad club, but one season getting Europa Conference League spot, that doesn't mean they're going to get it every year. We've seen West Ham this year. Yeah, they've just won it, but they had a really slow start to the season and they struggled. They were in the bottom three for a good chunks of this season, and they were in contention to get relegated.
Yeah, I was just going to say as well, as Leicester have learnt the hard way this year, nothing's guaranteed. Just because they've got top. Is it 7? Did they finish 7th or 8th? 7th in Conference League. They've got a good manager and they've got a good squad to start with and to build up on, but. It wouldn't surprise you if in 2 years we're back in the Premier League finishing above Villa. It wouldn't surprise you. So, I agree with what you're saying. It's probably a bit of like karma, really, that, he refused to sign a contract. We kind of pretty much let him run the contract down, and now he's going to Villa instead of Arsenal or whoever in Champions League football. But that's football. That's what he deserves. He has down tools a bit, and he refused to sign that contract. So yeah, that's what you get.
Yeah, I think we'll end it. I'm going to ask you one last question before we end it. If you can have to say one player you think would 100% be here with us in the Championship season, who would that be, Reedy? Who would be your one go-to player that is going to stick around for us, and why? Minus Christensen, he's already said so.
Or do I be stupid, or do I be just completely honest on what I think? The only person that I think, well, not the only person, but one person that I know will be here next season is Iverson. He's going to be. No one's going to come in for him, I don't think. And for me, he is too good for the Championship. He's shown it again. Preston, was it, a few years back? So for me, he gets straight back in the team. And there's going to be a lot of people that say KDH. I would want to say his name, but with links going around with Luton and whatnot, I can't risk it. So I'm just going to say someone that I know is going to be here next season.
Yeah.
I think there's one or two I would say, but the one I'm going to go with, just because I think he's going to have a great year next year, is Harry Souttar. I think he will stay. He's only been here 6 months, and I think he will have a great season. He was in the Championship with Stoke. He knows the league. I think he's going to be big for us next year. I've seen loaded KDHs, and you never know. You never know. He might leave, but yeah, we'll see.
I think all of us fans would have said maybe a couple of weeks ago when he did get relegated, KDH captain material.
Yep.
But we have heard of a lot of rumours that he may be going. Luton, obviously one of the clubs that he was on loan to. I can't see him personally going to Luton. I think Everton as well, they're up there. They're shouting for his name a bit, which I think comes to a surprise to a lot of us. Because I think if someone like Dewsbury, who we've given a big contract, he's a Leicester fan, let alone a Leicester player. If that's the kind of players that are leaving, who else is going to follow him? Because if you were to say one player would stay, Dewsbury would probably be in your top 3 players to be staying at the club. So
that's a good one we forget about, isn't it? We forget about Mark O'Brien. He'll be here next year, I think. Yeah, he's got 1 year left, doesn't he? So
he'll come baback in. He probably maybe gets back into the first team in and around. Obviously, there's 38 games, so we're going to have to do a bit more rotation next season.
Yay.
Because it's a tougher league. I think if I had to say one player that is staying, I think Vardy has been shouted out there, and I do think Vardy will stay because he is just one of those players. He's had the chances before, but before we got relegated, when we won the Premier League, Arsenal came knocking, and he stuck around, and he's done it all with Leicester. So I think 1 year left in his contract. I think that will be it for him, and his plan is to get us promoted before he either moves on to Saudi Arabia.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I agree. I think if we get promoted next season, I think he'll retire. I think so. I think he'll actually just retire. What will he be? 30? Will he be 38?
I think he's pushing that. Yeah, but by the end of his contract, he'll be
37, 38.
His last big push to get us promoted, and then he will go. Yeah.
Yeah, because I don't think he wants to. I don't think he'd risk another year in the Premier League getting relegated again. So I think he'll want to end it on a high, and that might finish off the movie. That might be like a bit of a plot twist in the movie, getting relegated, and then it finishes off with a high, getting promoted, and he retires. Maybe Sheffield Wednesday. Yeah. He could go Wednesday. You never know, but no, I think he'll retire after 1 more year. To be honest.
Yeah, for me, he'll either retire or, so like I said, Saudi Arabia or MLS will come knocking and say, listen, mate, here's a year contract for 2. You just ridiculous money, 50 million to play 1 season of football. Just do it. And he'll probably take it.
Yeah.
So thanks, guys, for watching. Obviously, it's been a weird one because we're talking pretty much out the dark. We don't know anything about anything at the moment that's going on with the club. We all want to make some movements. Obviously, in 5 days' time, the window does open for signing players that aren't on free. We've seen players like Duffy go already to Norwich, who could have been someone we went for, but again, no movement from the club. Again, to me, it just seems like a slow start to the season. That's what it was last year, and look at where we ended up. So keep getting your comments in.
Well, at least we got to see the kit early enough.
On the day we got relegated.
Last year, it took about
that's the whole kit.
The whole summer.
The kit we got relegated in is the whole kit. We've got to play 38 games in, if not more, in the the cup competitions. So
But next season is what is it? What is it? League game? Is it 46? 46 league games?
38, I think.
No, Championship's 46, mate.
Is it
44? It's like 44 or 46.
2014?
44. 40, 48? No, what is it? What is it, Reedy? How many games
Sorry,
in the Championship? How
48.
many games? 46. Yeah, 46.
They're saying 46. We'll trust Gray.
48.
Yeah, 'cause
Probably knows.
it's 20. Yeah, someone will let us know.
Yeah,
But
but
yeah,
then
so-
There's a lot of games.
just think you've got to think of cup games on top of that.
Yeah, you're looking at like 50 games minimum. 50 games minimum, mate. So one last thing I was going to say as well, just when you're talking about time ticking and stuff, is if the reason we haven't heard anything is because of Maresca, the Man City coach, and maybe we, if we were hiring him. But if that's not the reason, it's criminal. Like, fair enough if we say after the Champions League final, okay, here's our man, here's Maresca. That's why there was delays. But if it's not even him, and if it's just people that we've already interviewed, then it's madness. It's madness. Unless we're just waiting to interview him before making the final decision. But we're talking about at least 6 or 7 players leaving. On a transfer, not including the out of contracts, and then you're talking at least 7 or 8 probably coming in. We need to get a move on. We're running out of time, so there won't be any player movements until there's a manager. So
No, it is going to come around really quickly. We've got this tournament in Singapore again, which is a bad move, but before you know it, we'll be there playing and getting smashed by Liverpool, Spurs, and all that. So
You never know. We could beat them all, and we could have a brilliant season in the Championship. You never know.
I don't know. Anyway, we'll end it on that because Jamie's obviously going to do his show on Sunday. Hopefully, there's a bit more movement. Probably not knowing Leicester, but we'll see what happens in the next few coming days. Obviously, with the rumours and that, we'll be going lives. If there's anyone that comes in or anyone that's definitely going out or looks like they're going out, we'll go live. And we'll do shows from that. So obviously, when the window does open next Wednesday, there'll be a lot more videos and content going out. So just, keep a tune on the channel. Keep an eye out because we're going to do these sporadic lives that just happen there and then. So cheers all.